Lagos Commissioner confirms no case of coronavirus. U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says House Democrats will vote to block Trump's travel ban that includes Nigeria. In international news, China makes efforts to curb coronavirus. And in sport, Amunike takes charge of Egypt's El Makassa.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajuwon. Lagos State Ministry of Health has no case of coronavirus in the state. Commissioner for Health, Akin Abayomi, has said in a series of tweets the suspected carrier of the infection arrived to Nigeria from China on Wednesday and was quarantined. Abayomi said the returnee has not been diagnosed with the novel coronavirus. The commissioner said the report from the doctor that attended to the returnee indicates he's in perfect health with no symptoms of the virus. Niger Center for Disease Control also revealed the country has not recorded any case of coronavirus. Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu has directed the management of Lagos Bus Services Limited to deploy a fleet of 65 buses along major routes in areas of the city where a ban of commercial motorcycles, Okada and tricycles, Keke, took effect today. Lagbus Managing Director Idowu Oguntono says his organization will do its best to ease the inconvenience the ban would have caused to residents of those local government areas. He also acknowledged that the situation could give operators of other transport services an avenue to gauge customers if additional buses are not provided. The Senate is planning a public hearing on President Buhari's $29 billion loan request. Chairman of the Senate Committee on Finance, Senator Solomon Adiola, says this is to get a pulse of the people on the president's foreign loan plans. The previous National Assembly had rejected this proposed borrowing, saying it was not accompanied by expenditure details. Buhari has presented the request again in November to the current National Assembly for its consideration and approval. Senator Adiola said although the last Assembly had approved part of the loan request, all loans being requested would be attached to the execution of 5 legacy projects under the Buhari regime, including the second Niger Bridge, the East-West Road, the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Mambila Power Project, and the Kaduna-Abuja Highway. Adiola says the approval of the loan will enable the government to complete the projects before the end of Buhari's administration. United States Speaker of the House of Representatives Nancy Pelosi has announced House Democrats will present a bill that would block President Donald Trump's current ban on Nigeria and 5 other countries. Many Nigerians have been troubled by the effects this ban would have on their travel plans. Pelosi said in a press release on Monday, Democrats on the House Judiciary Committee will introduce and vote on what they titled the No Ban Act in the next few days to limit White House authority to impose travel restrictions on foreign nationals. Pelosi said, quote, House Democrats stand opposed to President Trump's cruel un-American travel ban in all of its iterations, end quote. Speaker Pelosi says House Democrats are working tirelessly to uphold the American role as a global leader and a beacon of hope and opportunity for countless peoples across the world. The Nigerian Bar Association has urged President Buhari and all parties involved to consider the recommendations of the National Judicial Council as the number of justices of the Supreme Court drops to 13 as a result of Justice Amiru Sanusi's retirement. Chief Justice of Nigeria Tanko Mohammed has repeatedly complained of being overworked because of the low number of justices at the Supreme Court. The Nigerian Constitution provides for 21 justices as a full complement of the bench. The exit of Justice Onohe, retirement of Justices Kume Akaz and Sidi Beg last year dropped the number of justices to 14. NBA says the president is yet to act on the recommendations of 4 justices of the Court of Appeal by the National Judicial Council since October. National Publicity Secretary Kunle Edron says the delay has caused an unhealthy burden on Supreme Court justices who are now overworked. The situation is causing up to 10-year delays in appeal hearings.
Coming up, African stories. Tanzania pastor arrested after stampede at his Blessed Oil service kills 20 worshippers. And later, international news. China making frantic efforts to contain the spread of coronavirus.
It up.
Welcome back. This is CNN News. On the African continent, at least 20 persons have died and 16 injured in a stampede as worshippers rushed to be anointed during a church service in northern Tanzania. 5 of those killed were children. Moshi District Commissioner Kipi Warioba said the incident happened when thousands of people crammed into a sports stadium for the service on Saturday evening in the town of Moshi near Mount Kilimanjaro. Many reportedly got crushed after the pastor called them to be anointed with blessed oil. Officials said on Sunday, Pastor Boniface Wampoza has been arrested in Tanzania's commercial capital, Dar es Salaam, for his role in the incident as they attempted to flee the country. The pastor had been drawing huge crowds by promising prosperity and cures for diseases to worshippers who step in what he calls blessed oil during his services. Home Affairs Minister George Simbakawe said on Sunday Pastor Wampoza will be held accountable for causing the tragedy. Authorities feared the death toll could rise because of the size of the crowd and poor lighting when the stampede occurred. In a historic move, the United States has invited to Washington's Sudan leader, Lieutenant General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, to discuss ways of developing bilateral ties. For the first time in more than 3 decades, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the two countries planned to begin exchanging ambassadors after a 23-year hiatus. U.S. and Sudan had been at odds for decades, but their relations have improved since Bashir's overthrow in April last year, leading to the formation of a civilian transitional government 4 months later. The current transitional power-sharing deal will see a civilian takeover next year until elections are held in 2022. Sudan remains on the list of state sponsors of terrorism, but Washington has hinted that it might be removed from the blacklist soon, although congressional approval would be required. Sudan's Foreign Council says the purpose of Burhan's visit to Washington was to discuss ways of developing bilateral relations between the two countries. It would not be an exaggeration to say that Somalia is being overrun by swarms of locusts. In fact, the East Africa region is experiencing a large invasion of locusts. It is so bad in Somalia that the government has declared a national emergency. Somali Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation, Saeed Hussein, has described the situation as a major threat to the country's food supply. Locusts destroyed at least 100,000 hectares of farmland and pasture in the country last December, prompting the Agriculture Minister to warn the second wave could be more destructive. Agriculture Ministry has described the new swarms as uncommonly large. It says they will consume very large amounts of crops and forage. Last month, the Somali government and international agencies appealed for humanitarian aid of more than $1 billion to help 3 million Somalis this year in form of food assistance. United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization says it needs $3 million initially to begin eradicating the locusts. The African Development Bank has launched its 2020 edition of its flagship African Economic Outlook report in Ivory Coast. It lays out the sectors that would be key in the continent's economic growth agenda. Dari Owar reports.
During the launch of the 2020 Africa Economic Outlook report, the Africa Development Bank president said that the report would provide short and medium-term forecast on major economic indicators in Africa, such as growth, poverty and employment.
The growth rate varies greatly among several African countries. In Côte d'Ivoire, the government has made a great effort because the growth rate is 7.4%. But there are other African countries with very low growth rates. It is therefore necessary to work on regional integration so that all African countries can participate in the growth of the continent.
The report also flagged the need for reforms in the education sector so as to boost capacity among youth seeking employment.
Africa has to invest more in human capital. That means we have to do more for education. We have to do more for skills so our young people can have the capacity to be able to get jobs. And we also have to look that we do what Africa 2063, and we have to follow the guidelines there so that all of our countries can do better.
The lowest and the highest poverty rates in Africa were not revealed at this meeting. However, the Africa Development Bank president emphasized that Africa's economic outlook continues to improve.
Growth is indeed something very important, but in reality, the population cannot feed off the GDP. It is therefore necessary to increase the number of people who have access to medical care, education, different financing, employment, etc. So in other words, African governments must work to ensure that growth goes hand in hand with improving the quality of life of the population.
If we have to attain Objective 2030 of the UN, if we have to attain the AU's Agenda of 2063, the 4 key areas that we have to focus on: we have to finance African female-owned businesses. We also have to invest in the digital space because the internet is wealth in our hands, depends on how we use it. You know, we have to digitalize our economies, our educational system, digitalize, the financial sector. And then we also have to invest in infrastructure. We cannot be talking on improving education when we don't have proper school setups. We don't have viable teachers that can actually transmit the skills to the Africa's workforce that we want to prepare against 2030. And then the last thing is we need political stability in order for us to check all these boxes.
Every year, about 12 million young graduates leave African universities with no job prospects. To address this, the Africa Development Bank has launched an employment promotion initiative to support the creation of 25 million jobs over the next 10 years in Africa.
When we return, international news. China making frantic efforts to contain the spread of coronavirus. And later, sport. Amunike takes charge of Egypt's El Makassa.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. On the global scene, death toll continues to rise in the coronavirus epidemic that has gripped China and is spreading globally. But China is making frantic efforts to curb the spread of the disease at home that would ultimately constrain global spread. Reporter Liu Yong tells us more about China's efforts at home.
It's a regular checkup at home, but it comes at a very critical time. Whilst all groups can contract the virus, the elderly are seen as one of the most vulnerable. 83-year-old Zhao Xing is a retired archaeologist. He told the doctor he learned a lot about protecting himself during the SARS outbreak of 2003. The doctor doesn't take any shortcuts during his examination, however, and reminds his patient how to wear his face mask properly and how to stay safe at home. China's community health service centers have played a vital role in preventing and controlling the epidemic at the current stage, when most of people are still at home for the Spring Festival holiday. Besides providing information on disease prevention, they also provide a monitoring service for people who have just returned to Beijing and quarantine observation for people who have been in contact with affected individuals. Beijing's Transport Authority says it's expecting millions of people to return to the capital over the coming days as the annual Spring Festival winds down. Many of these will have been to Hubei province over the past couple of weeks. Health workers say it's a time for everyone to be honest and responsible about their health.
One of our jobs is to verify the people who have returned to Beijing from Wuhan. We need to ask if they have a fever and instruct them to go to a designated hospital for treatment. Screening and prevention are crucial during the current outbreak.
This community health center has contacted more than 250 people who have returned to the locality from Wuhan. They're also in constant communication with the local residents committee and are ready to give whatever advice and support is needed over the phone.
The indoor temperature of 26 degrees is a little high. Remember to open the window at home for ventilation. If you have symptoms, go to a fever clinic. The body temperature is not constant. It may be a little higher during the day, so you don't have to be overly nervous.
For medics, there are no simple concerns. What is essential, however, is people know where they can go for help, including the many foreigners in the capital. Beijing municipality has asked them to take the necessary precautions, seek assistance of medics if needed, and to call the hotline 12345 if they need more information.
Even before Brexit became reality, the United Kingdom had begun looking outside Europe for possible trade deals that could help the country minimize any damage Brexit may cause to its international business. It has looked to Africa, and now it is weighing the United States to work out a deal that would favor businesses in both countries. Owen Fairclough reports from Vienna, Virginia.
We make a fantastic crust, which gives a lot of rise, and that's part of it. People like the good crust.
The Cornish pasty, a classic British snack, but these are made in Northern Virginia.
Beef, potatoes, carrots, onions, salt and pepper.
Pure Pasties chef Nicola Willis-Jones and her team make 2,000 of these by hand every week, with winning results.
You can put anything in a pasty if it tastes good.
Beating the Cornish on their own turf with back-to-back titles at the World Pasty Championships, thanks to a crucial addition.
We came up with the chicken barbecue, but it needed a little bit of sweetness, so we threw in the pineapple.
Even sweeter for owner Mike Burgess, who spotted an opportunity to bring a taste of home to the US 10 years ago.
A lot of my customers are American customers that come in here because of their relationship with the UK.
That relationship should become even closer if the two countries can negotiate a post-Brexit free trade deal aimed at eliminating widely fluctuating tariffs. Having expanded to offer British goods such as pickled onions or Marmite, that's a yeast extract, lower tariffs would help Mike lower the cost of his imports.
We get pallet loads of these things in every month. So if that makes that a little bit easier, and if it kind of expands out the variety of things that I can bring in, yeah, that's a great thing. That's a bonus to us all.
While London and Washington negotiate, Pure Pasty is focused on keeping customers happy, offering British traditions for American taste buds.
This week we had the Philly cheesesteak because
right,
of the Super Bowl, and then we have the buffalo chicken also for the Super Bowl.
And when you're with the upper crust of pasties, there's one last thing to do. This is the first time I've had a pasty since moving to the United States, so let's see what a world beater tastes like. It's so good.
The bushfires in Australia have gone beyond what anyone could have imagined. Hundreds of thousands of hectares of land have been scorched, endangering wildlife. A koala hospital is taking care of many dehydrated and hungry animals, including nearly 70 koalas. The hospital treats the animals for injuries caused by the flames. Greg Navarro tells us more.
Inside the clinic at the Port Macquarie Koala Hospital.
She has been treated with some quite powerful drugs.
The prognosis for this female koala is not good.
And unfortunately, they've really done nothing.
Suffering from chlamydia, a bacterial infection that is devastating the species. Disease, along with motor vehicle accidents and loss of habitat, are usually enough to keep the hospital busy. That was before the start of the country's bushfire season.
It's Armageddon out there. And to see koalas still in the tops of trees that are 30 meters high with a tiny bit of eucalypt that has survived, and that is all they have. All around them, there is nothing.
These koalas are needing a little bit of extra care.
The hospital's intensive care unit is full, many of the animals suffering from burns. Even in the outdoor rehabilitation area, the impact from these fires is visible.
Thousands and thousands have been lost, but nobody has actually come up with a definite number at this stage.
Many of the animals that were lucky enough to survive have lost their food sources and their habitats.
We think they have been hit terribly, and it's going to take many, many years for them to recover, but we are so determined to do everything we possibly can to help wild koalas in Australia. We're not going to let the fires beat us.
The hospital is largely run by volunteers, including Mick Feeney, who at 70 years of age is still tough to keep up with.
We have to accept that while we do the very, very best that we can, sometimes the very best is still not enough.
There are koalas here who've been treated and rehabilitated, but for whatever reason they can't be released back into the wild. However, they'll remain here and be used for breeding programs. The extraordinary challenges facing these animals is receiving attention around the world and here at home. The koala helps to bring in millions, if not billions of dollars in tourism revenue. Some of the millions of dollars in donations that have poured into the hospital will go toward buying land to be used for breeding programs.
I think for the first time, people in the community and even politicians are starting to notice how important the iconic Australian koala is.
And nobody, people here say, wants to lose it.
Up next, sport. Amunike takes charge of Egypt's El Makassar. Please stay with us.
Welcome back. This is ANN News and Sport. Largest former international Emmanuel Amunike has been named the new head coach of Egyptian Premier League side El Makassar on a deal that would last till the end of the season. He would be El Makassar's fourth manager in 3 years. Amunike led Tanzania to their first Africa Cup of Nations since 1980 and resigned by mutual consent following the team's failure to progress to the knockout stages of Egypt's 2019. FIFA President Gianni Infantino has proposed 4-year intervals between Africa Cup of Nations championships instead of the current 2 years. He has also proposed a Pan-Africa Super League with 20 permanent member clubs. The FIFA president complained that football in the region had not progressed as expected. He expressed the desire to project African football to the world. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.